Gordy will give us a talk on UFOs and the New World Order. I guess, should we start? It looks like we're just about all here, 9 of us. So, yeah, why don't I start by introducing you, Gordy?
Okay.
This is, oh, I'm sure we're all here because this is June the 18th. This is Paul McCartney's 78th birthday. Yay.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Wow, happy birthday, Paul.
Yeah.
So
is he joining us? Is he joining us on the Zoom call?
Oh, I'm sure he'll be here in spirit at least. Yeah, so Gordy, he's been into UFOs since the 1960s. Is with the Flying Saucer Club in Vancouver in 1963. So he's got lots of experience. We've done 5 videos already. If you go to my UFO playlist on my BitChute channel, on my YouTube channel, I've already done a bunch of videos with Gordy Tong already. So Gordy, I guess you can give a talk, and then after your talk, we can have questions and discussion. You want to do like a lecture format first, then questions later? Would you like to do it that way?
Okay. The only person I can see on the screen right now is just you, Brian. Is there a way to see anybody else? Or
I think that's because I have an inflated opinion of myself. My ego just kind of fills the screen.
If you go, Gordy, if you go to the upper right-hand corner, there's
yeah.
Your cursor. There's speaker view and there's gallery view, which is like a couple of dots. If you click on gallery view, you'll see everybody. If you see speaker view, then only the person whose mic is on will be visible.
Oh. I don't even see that.
It should be the top right, eh?
I do see the top right, but I just say share content, stop video, and it says more, but I don't see anything else. It doesn't matter. Oh, iPad, I see it now. Now I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, here. Now I can see everybody.
And Mustafa is here. So Mustafa just joined us.
Okay.
And Rolf, I guess you don't have your camera on. Are you shy?
I don't know. It doesn't.
No, his camera's on. His camera's on. It says it's on. I just don't. It might not be working because if you click on participant list, you can see if their camera they're muted.
Well, maybe you don't have a camera.
It's an old camera that I attached to the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I'm glad at least the microphone part works, but anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of us. Wow, this is pretty good for Zoom. Last time Mimi and I had Mark on, there's 3 of us last meeting. So hey, we're making a comeback.
That was sad.
Because Mimi and I, we paid what, $132 for a 6-month membership for Meetup. So they don't allow us to meet in person, but at least we're doing something with this Meetup. So that's good. Okay, Gordy, you want to take it away? You give us your talk.
Okay, there's so much to cover, and I'll start off. Everybody's familiar with Ronald Reagan, right?
Yep. Okay.
Ronald Reagan gave a speech at the United Nations. It's on YouTube right now, and I have it. I can click it on. But he said, if the world was faced with a threat to all humanity, then hey, the world may overlook, people that are having issues with countries that are having issues and people that are having issues with each other would overlook their differences and deal with a common threat. Can anybody, do people remember that speech he said? He said it more about 4 or 5 times. So
the 80s,
and he said it he said it at the United Nations, which is interesting. I have a friend named Carl Tykrit. He's on my YouTube channel. He's one of Canada's top researchers, and he's been to a lot of UN events and conferences. Did you know the UN has had an interest in the UFO subject? Yeah, Jacques Vallée and Jan Heineck. There's photographs of them, and I think it was Kurt Waldheim, the Secretary General, at a UN meeting to discuss the UFO subject. Okay. And so when Ronald Reagan made this speech that the world would countries would overlook their difference if we had a common enemy. And we've watched, there's shows like Independence Day. Again, it shows the world uniting to deal with a common threat to humanity. Back about 25, 30 years ago, I came across a document. It's called The Report from Iron Mountain. Anybody heard about that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, there's people alleging it's a real document. Other people think it's, questionable. But almost 25, 30 years ago, there were this group was saying, well, what could help cause people to accept a new world order or some form of world government? And they mentioned some of the threats. Well, an environmental threat, climate. Back then they didn't talk about climate change, but this threat that our environment was threatened. We now talk about global warming, ocean levels rising. So that is a threat. But in this report from Iron Mountain, they said, what about if there's a threat, an extraterrestrial threat, or the UFO phenomena can be perceived as a threat to humanity? Like Stephen Hawking has said, it may not be a good idea to make contact with beings and send signals up into space. And if these beings are highly technological, if they're extraterrestrial, or the other hypothesis, if they're interdimensional and they're vastly superior to us, he said it would be like, the Spanish in the Americas. They would be there looking for the gold, the resources, and what happened to the people? Well, they were decimated by disease, by conflict. Some of these people were brought into slavery. So there is this idea in TV shows, movies that, hey, if there's a perceived threat, right now we're starting to have what appears to be more disclosure about the UFO subject, right? We're hearing from people that have worked with the United Nations, pilots that have flown missions for the Navy on the USS Nimitz. They're coming forward and saying, hey, we're seeing things that we can't explain. They're not ours. The Tic Tac UFO was seen by various pilots. There's stuff on YouTube showing videos of or flare of these kind of objects. So, and Nick Pope, are any of you familiar with Nick Pope?
Yep, former British military advisor, some of that.
Well, he worked for the Ministry of Defense. They said he's like the Fox Mulder of England. But I've seen some of his interviews and talks, and he is talking about that UFO phenomena could be perceived or maybe viewed right now by people in England as a possible threat to air security. Okay, because there's been many, many sightings in England, Scotland, and in other places in the British Commonwealth. Everybody familiar with Paul Hellyer?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I met him.
Well, he spoke a few years ago at a conference. Richard Dolan was there, Grant Cameron, and he was talking about the cabal. He wasn't talking just about the UFO subject, but I interviewed him afterwards, and on video. That video has been lost now, but he said he did believe that some of these beings that we call extraterrestrials, he said that some of them may be, hostile to humanity. Okay, and so if there is a perceived perception of an extraterrestrial race that is highly technological, highly advanced, possibly, tens of thousands or millions of years ahead of us in evolution, well, that will be perceived by some scientists and people in the military and certain governments of this world as a threat. And again, this could cause, what do we do about a threat? Why are they having meetings sometimes at the UN about the UFO subject? Why are countries like Canada, France, some of the South American countries are releasing, and Mexico are releasing their official files on the UFO subject? Why is there more and more disclosure on this subject? Okay, sorry, I'm not always watching myself on the screen, I'm looking at everybody else. So that could be one way for this phenomena to be, as it's disclosed, to if depending on how it's disclosed, it can cause people to perceive, a possible threat to humanity. as we seen in numerous Hollywood movies. Even National Geographic on Discovery Channel did a documentary about what happens when aliens attack. When aliens attack, that was the name of the documentary. Discovery Channel did something similar. And then there's another show called okay. Yes, World War A. Anybody seen World War A?
Nope.
Okay, go to YouTube later or type in when aliens attack National Geographic, and why are these geographic organizations, Discovery Channel, putting out stuff about how humanity may have to deal with a threat from outer space? Okay, so if you look on YouTube, there are people that are saying, well, maybe they are a threat, or maybe with all this disclosure, they can create a false flag of threat. Okay, that could unite humanity. So we're not fighting each other, we're dealing with a common threat. Now, could that usher in a new world order? Well, according to what I read in the documents called the Report from Iron Mountain, yes, they said the threat of a UFO invasion or hostile aliens would, yeah, it could cause humankind to come together and deal with this common threat. So that is one possibility. But even back in the 80s, there was an event called the harmonic convergence, and people were told that UFOs would show up over certain places in the world, and one place was Mount Shasta. I received the documents from this organization that was headed by a newsletter from Jose Arguelles. He mentioned the United Nations in this document. It's a kind of a newsletter to various, people interested in this harmonic convention events. And they said that UFOs possibly could show up during the harmonic convergence. He called the beings inside these UFOs higher galactic intelligences, another word for ET. And he said this, if this happens, this would help to facilitate the coming of a new world order. So the term new world order was used in this document. I took pictures of this document. I don't have the original document anymore, but I have photographs of it. And it mentioned new world order, aliens, UFOs, United Nations. Okay? So over the years, I've come across people, researchers, people that are whistleblowers that are saying, yeah, maybe some of these aliens, some of them are called reptilians, or the archons, or there's a perception that some of them are possibly hostile. They have intentions that are not for the best interests of humanity. Okay? But what about beings that are perceived not to be hostile? Have you come across information about what are called the Space Brothers, the Nordics? Everybody's heard about them, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, it happens that in cases of abductions, like the Travis Walton case, hey, the Nordics are working with these other aliens that are not Nordic and human-looking, and they're involved with the alleged abduction of Travis Walton. So, and there's websites that deal with what are called the Nordics or Space Brothers, but the Nordics or the Pleiadians, they are supposed to be spiritual. They are supposed to be interested in our spiritual welfare. They have spiritual philosophies. Another being alien that appeared initially in the late 50s was a person named Valiant Thor. Anybody heard about Valiant Thor?
Yeah.
Dr. Frank
1950s.
Strange,
Yeah.
Dr. Frank Strange became a contact for Valiant Thor. Apparently, according to the story, he landed his UFO or spacecraft near the Pentagon, but in New Jersey. He was escorted by police officers. He kind of indicated he wanted to, meet with take me to your leader, the head of the government of the United States. So he was taken to the Pentagon. There was a lady there that worked at the Pentagon that met Valiant Thor, and Valiant Thor was introduced to a fellow called Dr. Frank Stranges. Now, Frank Stranges was a person who had worked for the government. He has a background in criminology, psychology, and he studied some theology. He's supposed to be a Christian minister as well. So I was very interested in that case. So here we have someone like the alien and the day that Earth stood still. They're not here to invade us. They're here to offer help, to maybe heal our diseases. And that was the offer, that they could heal all human diseases. And so Dr. Strange wrote about his encounter, and the reason why he thought this person was an alien, because Valiant Thor was telepathic. He knew a lot of things about Dr. Strange without ever meeting him. He had no fingerprints. He had no navel. Yeah, I spoke to Dr. Strange's wife, and she believes that he's some kind of angel, an alien that kind of looks, that's perceived to be an angel. So anyways, he was supposed to be a special VIP guest of the Eisenhower administration for 3 years. And at various times, Dr. Strange came and spent time with him. Later, after 3 years, he still kept in touch with Dr. Strange. And there was teaching that was passed on, philosophy, mystical disciplines that were taught to Dr. Strange and a group called the Inner Circle. Now, Dr. Strange did pass away. I think he had some kind of accident, and he didn't recover from this accident in his home. That's when I last heard. But the new contactee for Valiant Thor, the present contactee that's best known is Craig Campobasso. Anybody hear about him? Craig Campobasso is a filmmaker. He somehow heard about this book, Stranger at the Pentagon, and the Valiant Thor story, and he approached Dr. Strange and said, "I'd like to make a film about your book and encounters that you had with Valiant Thor." So Dr. Strange, before he passed away, was agreeable to that. And if you go online and type in "Stranger at the Pentagon," you'll see like a 20-minute short film. There was an intention to raise enough money to produce a feature film, but the short film was shown at theaters and places, festivals in the States for people to look at, and it had a pretty high rating. But here we have an extraterrestrial that claims to come from Venus. He has been seen by people like Howard Menninger. Dr. Strange, of course, was introduced to Valiant Thor. But there were it wasn't just one person that met Valiant Thor. And Craig Campobasso today claims that he is in contact from time to time telepathically. He is getting notes for this film. He got notes and ideas for this film. So if you want to see a case of someone who appears to be benign, alien, they're here not to invade us, but they're offering to heal our illnesses. And Eisenhower was given this proposal, and Eisenhower he consulted some of his advisors, and they turned down the proposal. Now, why would he do that?
Because he's aligned with the New World Order, perhaps?
No. Oh. There was nothing connected with the New World Order.
Oh.
It's just that it was perceived that this person could really heal all our diseases. And, well, that's going to put a lot of people out of work. They'll have to, doctors won't have much work to do. Hospitals have to be closed. But there was no demonstration at the Pentagon that he had this ability to heal. I mean, he could speak many different languages. He could speak any language of the world. He was not a prisoner of the Pentagon. He could dematerialize his body and appear somewhere else. He was not a prisoner. But the military brass that were introduced to Valiant Thor, according to Dr. Strange's book and other sources, there's a fellow named Phil Schneider. Have you heard of him? He's worked on deep underground bases.
Yeah.
He claims that his father, who was involved in the Philadelphia experiment, also met Valiant Thor. And there's a picture of Valiant Thor at a meeting of engineers or scientists involved with the Philadelphia experiment. You can look up that picture. But there's pictures of Valiant Thor on Google image search, if you want to look him up and what he looked like. Now, fine. Now, this Valiant Thor claims that he has an unbroken, unfallen relationship with the Creator, God. Okay, what we, Christians and Jews and people call God, monotheists. And he also speaks very highly of Jesus Christ, that he is the Savior, the Messiah, the Son of God. Doesn't say anything that's unbiblical about Jesus. And so Craig Campobasso did a short interview or video, and he said, did you know that there was an angel at the Pentagon, implying Valiant Thor is this angelic alien? Now, what did Valiant Thor actually teach Dr. Strange? And this teaching was passed on to a study group called the Inner Circle. Well, they had a newsletter, and I phoned Dr. Strange's ministry. He's dead now, but I spoke to his wife, and she was a very nice woman. She has a Christian background, and her perception is Valiant Thor is an angel of some kind. And Craig Campobasso has the same idea. Well, okay, if he's an angel, is he really an angel of God? Or is he some kind of other type of angel? Can angels be extraterrestrials, or extraterrestrials angels? Okay, there's that question. But anyways, there's been contactees like Orfeo Angelucci. You can look him up. He's mentioned in this book called Angels. There's a chapter on the UFO phenomena and encounters with human-looking aliens or angelic aliens in a chapter. So Orfeo, who is a contactee, is asking the question, well, where do you come from? This human-looking, angelic-looking, by the way, the Bible says that the angels can appear in a human form, but they can take other forms. They can have faces of a bird or a lion, cherubim and seraphim. There's different types of angels according to the Bible, but they can walk among us. They can. There's teaching in the Bible that sometimes when you're entertaining a stranger, try to be kindly to strangers, because you might be entertaining a stranger unaware. An angel unaware. You're not aware that he's an angel.
Oh, thank you, Gordy.
Anyways, so there is a perception that there are angelic-looking aliens. Now, there's another woman who has a Christian background. Her name is Betty Andreessen. Have you heard of the Betty Andreessen case? Anybody heard of this book or the Andreessen affair?
No.
Okay. It says the documented investigation of a woman's abduction aboard a UFO. And that's the case written. The story is about Betty Andreessen, Christian background. And she has a visitation of these beings in her home. And she was taken, I think, to another dimension or into what she thought was a spacecraft. And these beings said to her, that they are the watchers. They said, we're the watchers. That's the term they use. Has anybody heard that term, watchers, before?
Yep.
From the Bible, right?
Well, it's in the book of Daniel. There's a mention of that there was a watcher that had to discipline Nebuchadnezzar because he was quite arrogant. And the watcher somehow touched Nebuchadnezzar, and he became mentally ill. And he was like an animal, sometimes just eating grass on the ground like an animal, a grazing animal. This inflicted after the Watcher touched Nebuchadnezzar, according to the book of Daniel, he was deeply humbled by this encounter with the Watcher. Now, whether this Watcher was a good angel or a fallen Watcher, that it's not clear in my reading of it. Raymond Fowler, I corresponded with him, and he believes that this was a good Watcher, okay? Because in the Bible, there's this talk of fallen angels and angels that are not fallen. And also, there is something that was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was called the Book of Enoch. Anybody heard of the Book of Enoch?
Yep.
If you go online and type in, what's in the Book of Enoch, it talks about a time in the ancient world, in fact, recorded in the book of Genesis, when these beings that are called, in the Book of Enoch, they're called the Watchers. They saw humanity, and they saw that some of the women, earth women, were extremely beautiful. And I guess they lusted after these women, and there was marriages or sexual encounters with these women, and children were born. Now, where have we heard of beings that come from that are perceived to be angels or gods having sexual union with humankind to bear children? Well, it's in the Greek myths. Zeus was the supreme deity of the Greek Olympian gods, right? If you look up his profile, he had many, many wives or children with women. One of them was Hercules. Now, is Hercules an historical person? There are some scholars and historians that say yes, he was involved with the Olympic Games. Okay, he's described in ancient Greek historical accounts. There were temples built to the worship of Hercules, even though he was just a demigod. How many of you heard of Perseus or Achilles or even Helen of Troy? She's supposed to be the daughter of Zeus, and her beauty was so incredible, it led to the Trojan Wars. What about Alexander the Great? Some of the followers of Alexander the Great thought that Alexander the Great was a demigod. When he was when Alexander visited an oracle in Africa, an oracle told him that his father was Zeus. Okay, now, how many of you have heard of the Anunnaki?
Yep.
Okay, that's Zachariah Stitchings. He's got an interpretation of the Anunnaki as being some type of extraterrestrials that came here. Originally, they were from a planet that had a very large elliptical orbit around our solar system. I don't know if science has proven that to be the case. They do believe that there could be a planet beyond Pluto. But anyways, Zachariah Stitching's view is that these beings came to Earth. They were, the Sumerians considered them to be gods, but they were genetically capable of altering human primates, proto-humans or whatever you want to call them, to create a race to mine gold. Somehow they needed gold to protect their atmosphere or their world. And so again, there are stories of these beings that come, they genetically alter humankind or they mate with human women. So that is in the Book of Enoch. There's quite a bit of information about it. The progeny of these, hello? Did somebody ask a question to say something?
It looks like Starlight Naomi joined us.
Okay, hi. Thanks for joining.
Say hi to Jasmine Pepel as well. She came late. Hi, Jasmine.
Okay, so in UFO literature, we have the concept of beings that are called the Watchers. These have been identified as fallen angelic beings, right? Angelic beings. In UFO contact literature, we have stories, again, of beings that look very human. They have a spiritual philosophy. Valiant Thor, like I say, he claimed he had an unbroken, unfallen relationship with the Creator. And I got a copy of the newsletter from Dr. Strange's wife that was sent, a copy that was sent to the Inner Circle. So this newsletter contained some encounters that Valiant Thor had in this particular newsletter with a very special guest. And that special guest, according to the newsletter, was Jesus Christ. But according to the account, Jesus was invited to their council meeting, but he's strangely very quiet. He doesn't say much. Now, how many of you have heard of Dr. Carla Turner? She wrote a book called Taken. She was an abductee herself. She has a PhD in English. She was a professor of English. When she was younger, she was involved with counterculture, but eventually she got abducted. Excuse me. Anyways, if you go and type in articles by Carla Turner, she talks about aliens that are involved with the abduction phenomenon. She's interviewed various abductees, and a number of the women abductees have said, yeah, they were abducted, but they were surprised to see what they thought was Jesus aboard a UFO, and different UFOs. Now, how many have you heard of Linda Moulton Howe?
Yeah, I just saw her show last night.
Okay, she had an article, and she started to notice that a number of abductees, and there are contactees as well, that claim they've met Jesus aboard a UFO. It's almost like saying I met Elvis on a UFO. Okay, but she said, hey, why are these contactees, abductees, people that have started UFO religions and cults? They all claim, many of them claim that they've met Jesus. Okay, now what is Valiant Thor's view about God? What does he say about God? Well, if you type in the search of the teaching of Valiant Thor online, and I came across a website with his teaching, he talks about God like God is a notion of oneness, a sense that everything is God, all is one and all is God. I mean, that's one of the mantras that some people within what we call New Age movement, that's their definition of God. That God is everything, all is God, all is connected to God, everything is, it's like the Force in Star Wars, right? There's a dark side of the Force, there's a light side of the Force, but everything's part of the Force. And if you want power, you want to be a Jedi Knight, and you want to be Darth Vader, you have to plug in or connect with the Force, okay? So the idea that I ran across when I was investigating like New Age beliefs is this concept of God. And Valiant Thor, he presents the same idea of God, and he talks about different dimensions, and there's some maybe mystical techniques or methods to reach these higher dimensions. And Valiant Thor said, when you reach the 10th dimension, you'll realize this oneness, that God is part of everything. Now, there's been other people that have been told something similar, that God is the universe. Aliens have said to some contactees, abductees, that the universe is God. And how do we explore this other universe or this universe or these other dimensions? How many of you have heard of Dr. Jacques Vallée?
Sure.
How many have seen the film Close Encounters?
Sure.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, well, there was an actor who played Jacques Vallée in that show. He was a French computer researcher. I had a chance to meet Jacques Vallée. What?
Love Close Encounters. Big fan right here.
Oh, I've seen that show probably 7 or 8 times.
At least.
Yeah, the
But
inside information to make it from the military.
But I met Jacques Vallée in 1989 at a UFO MUFON conference in Las Vegas. Oh, so when you deal with UFO abductions encounters, you're dealing with beings that have a philosophy. They have a message for mankind. That message can be positive or it can be a threat to humankind. How many have heard of David Jacobs? Dr. David Jacobs. He's a retired professor of history who taught at Temple University. Brian, didn't you do an interview or talk to him at one time?
No, but Bud Hopkins, he gave one of his last talks to a UFO meetup group through Doug on his phone.
Well, Bud Hopkins and David Jacob, they did parallel research. They were both researching the abduction phenomenon, but both of them came to a very negative view about the UFO agenda, UFO abduction agenda. And David Jacobs wrote about it in a book called The Threat. Okay, in The Threat, Jacobs worked with many abductees in the United States and other countries over a period of maybe 20, 30 years. And he came to a conclusion from hearing abductees and their accounts of abductions that there was a threat to humanity. This threat was that as long as people cooperate with this agenda to create a new governance, a new, it's almost like a government on this planet. This thing that's coming is called the change. It's a change of governance of this planet. This government in the future will involve humans, aliens, hybrids, but abductees are being warned or told that if people do not cooperate with this agenda, there's no future for these people. Now, Jacobs, when he heard that, he said, well, hey, that sounds like a threat. So he wrote the book, The Threat. And then later he wrote a book called They Walk Among Us, dealing with hybrids and hybrids. Hybrids are beings that are part human. Sometimes they don't look fully human, some of them, but the higher hybrids look identical to humans. They're called hybrids. So if you type in David Jacobs, They Walk Among Us, read his book. He talks about these beings here, but he talks about them in the book, The Threat, as well. And in the book, The Threat, some of these hybrids are actually luring people to out-of-the-way places, away from family and friends, so that they get abducted. And Timothy Good, if you type in Timothy Good's, Timothy Good is one of England's top UFO researchers. He was at the MUFON conference in '89. But recently, he's done some videos with Nick Pope. Also, he himself has become an abductee. He was taken from his home, and he found himself away from his home. And then, yeah, he had to, I guess, somehow get back to his home. But he was taken from his home, so he became an abductee. Well, around Vancouver, there's been a number of UFO researchers that I've met that claim they've had contact experiences and eventually they were abducted. One is Lauren Goldfader, I mentioned him before. There's Graham Conway, the head of UFO BC. He told me and some other people at UFO BC that he has become an abductee. And he said there are marks on his body, on his leg or on his foot. And when Lauren Goldfader, this UFO investigator, came to me, he had attended Stephen Greer's talks at SFU on how to create protocols or using certain protocols to make contact. So Lauren Goldfader, Graham Conway, there's been a number of UFO researchers that have either become contactees or abductees. Dr. Stephen Greer is a contactee. He's not an abductee. He doesn't believe that there's any evil aliens. That's his view. But the people that are being taken, they're not all happy with they're being taken against their will, subjected sometimes to sexual invasions of their body. Sperm and egg is harvested from men and women. Some of these abductees are being shown their children later. And some of the early hybrids didn't look fully human. They had larger heads and bigger eyes and wispy hair. That's what David Bud Hopkins describes. And so Timothy Good, Dr. Jacobs, their conclusion after many years of the abduction phenomena is that there are beings that don't respect free will and human choice, and they take us, and they're creating what appears to be hybrid race. Now, there are researchers like Mary Rodwell in Australia. I was in contact with her for a while. Is it Barbara Lamb somewhere and they have a benign view of this hybridization program. Now, Richard Dolan has interviewed both David Jacobs and Barbara Lamb. So he's hearing Jacobs say, hey, there's something really dark and maybe unpleasant and maybe a threat to humanity. So he's getting that for David Jacobs, or maybe Bud Hopkins would say something similar before he died. But then you have people like Mary Rodwell. I was corresponding with her for a while, and she's a midwife and former nurse, and she was having patients and people coming to her saying that I've been abducted, I have children now. She's met some of these hybrid children. Some of these hybrid children seem to have special powers, like Valiant Thor. They have powers of telepathy, extrasensory perception, telekinetic abilities, the ability to heal people with touch. So we're seeing, okay, good aliens, bad aliens, is that what we're seeing? Good watchers, fallen watchers. What is really going on? Also, many of you heard Desta when she was here. Remember Desta?
Yeah.
She was an assistant to Grant Cameron. Well, she became a channeler. I think she was involved with remote viewing. One of the last talks that she gave to the UFO Meetup group after having her own encounters and sightings of these UFOs and beings that she thinks are ET, she's come to a conclusion. She's told the Meetup group that these beings are liars. They tell lies. They deceive people. Now, where have we heard that before? If you look at UFO contactees and UFO cults and religions, the UFO contactees are sometimes given prophetic prophecies. There's actually a book called When Prophecy Fails. It's about a woman who had a group following, and they were promised a lot, and other groups were promised that the UFOs would show up at a certain date, a certain time. Sometimes the UFOs promised to evacuate people or take people off this planet. Others, they may experience some type of an ascension event. But when these prophecies are given and dates are mentioned, often when the date arrives, like at the harmonic convergent, nothing shows up. There are no UFOs. There's nothing. It's like, that's why this book was written about this UFO group and believers. And they were given predictions that didn't pan out. So that's why this group called Seekers was mentioned in the book When Prophecy Fails. Well, if you look at, go to Wikipedia and type in UFO religions or UFO cults. And again, we have UFO cults that are started by contactees. Again, prophecies were given to these people. Another group was called the Unarians. Remember, have you heard of a woman named Ruth Norman? Through automatic writing or some channeling, she was able to make contact with aliens. Again, she was given many predictions that the UFOs would show up in great numbers. And so they bought property in California for that very event. Well, there was a date that was first given that the UFOs and aliens would show up in 1974. Well, the date came, there were no aliens, there was no UFOs, nothing showed up. So Ruth Norman said, well, maybe they're going to come later. So she gave another prediction, maybe through her channeling, that it was this UFO event where they would come and land, and they were supposed to land like saucers on top of each other. Anyway, she thought that she would see this coming of the UFOs before she died. Anyway, she did die later, and to this day, nobody in her UFO religion or cult has ever seen these UFOs land and stack themselves up like saucers on top of each other. That never happened. Just type in her name, Ruth Norman, and type in the Unarian group. There's a YouTube channel about UFO cults. Now, another UFO cult that I investigated here in Vancouver is the Ray Aliens. How many have you heard of Claude Bollyhorn or Ray L, who is kind of the prophet or messiah of this UFO religion?
Sure.
They bought property in Quebec, I think close to Montreal. Ray L was kind of a race car enthusiast and journalist, but he claimed he had a UFO encounter near a crater in France, and he met these beings that were humanoid, smaller than us, and they claimed to be the Elohim, and they claimed that they were involved with the creation of humans on this planet. Anyways, whether that story was made up or true, because I've heard journalists have gone to France to talk to people that knew Claude Bollyhorn or Rael, and Claude said he made up some of this story. He didn't, not all of it's true, according to what the journalists heard. Now, why did he make up this story that he was a contactee? Maybe he was a contactee. It's very hard to know if he's telling the truth that he was a contactee, or he just made up the story. But some of the journalists were talking to friends of Claude Bollyhorn, and the friends of Claude Bollyhorn, and including his wife and some of the people, some of them left the Ray Alien movement. As the prophet and messiah of this movement, he had his choice of very beautiful women that joined his religion.
Yeah, but
Yeah, they
Joseph's
always do
idea is
this
you
to
can
me.
just write down the number and go
Every
into Zoom.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go there right now.
While we're waiting, Gordy, did you have many meetings, or did you meet with Graham Conway?
Yes, he was actually a good friend of mine. I went to
Really?
some of his meetings that they held some speakers in a kind of a mini conference at the planetarium.
Yeah.
I've been to his house. Yeah, I kept in touch with him. And he died of a meningitis infection.
No, I did know. It was unexpected for me, at least. We were actually becoming closer friends, and he sent me an envelope with a bunch of pictures with him and David Hamill. And,
okay.
Yeah, I was becoming in that circle because actually he was investigating me, right?
Oh, okay. And you're a contactee, or?
I'm kind of. It's a big long story.
Okay.
At first, I was continuously being abducted.
Okay.
But then it turns out that I'm actually a shapeshifter.
Oh, okay. And if you change shape, what do you appear to look like?
Well, the people who actually saw me shift was two separate women. One is right next to me, and they're absolutely terrified when they saw it. And the other one was another woman that I was with, not related or anything, that I met at the UFO Meetup group a long time ago. And she actually saw me shift as well, but she wasn't as terrified because she kind of knew it, expected it. But
was that Gina? Gina?
Yeah, that was Gina. Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to her and met her, and she's got children, right?
Yes.
that are also sometimes disappearing from her home and
Yeah.
maybe being abducted?
Oh no, yeah, they definitely are.
Okay.
I was with Gina for 2 years, and then I met Rana Lee. We were now together for about 7 years, and she's seen me a couple times, and now I can't look in her eyes anymore, you know, because anyways, okay. So,
when you shapeshift, do your eyes shapeshift to look
No,
different?
so I'm psychic, I'm clairaudient, but I do have visuals. And so when I look into the eyes, and the eyes are the soul, I can actually see quite a bit when my brainwave changes at a certain frequency.
Okay.
And he's not very handsome.
Okay, well.
Actually, she cried. She was like terrified.
Well, have you heard of David Icke's research? Some research he talked about shapeshifting and his book, The Biggest Secret?
No.
Okay. David Icke is he's a conspiracy author, researcher.
Oh, David Icke, who just
he's on
Ryan London Real.
London Real.
Okay, well, when he was in Vancouver, he met a woman who had a boyfriend. And when they were together sometimes, this person shapeshifted to look more reptilian. Okay? Okay, now, I have a UFO hotline, or paranormal help hotline. I got a call one day from a girl named Brenda. But anyways, she just invited me to go to an exopolitics lecture at something they call Exo University. And so she told me that she herself was a contactee. Now, the reason, the way she became a contactee was, like, she was kind of into science fiction, Star Trek, and she thought it would be really cool to meet an alien, you know, someone who was alien, you know, somebody like Spock. But anyways, so when she was in Tokyo, she signed up with a dating service, and then she got a call, or you know, from someone who claimed to be a British diplomat. So anyways, they got together, I think at where she was staying, or anyways, Brenda only saw this person once. Now, have you seen the movie The Matrix? We have is it the red pill and the blue pill, or the green? You know, there's two. Anyways, this fella said to Brenda, hey, I've got something for you to drink. There was a little vial that looked like a blueberry juice.
Oh,
another little vial that looked like raspberry juice.
Pardon my French.
Okay, and she chose the thing that looked like blueberry juice. Anyways, now I have a theory that that juice was spiked with something. It could have been a DMT, dimethyltryptophan. It's an active hallucinogen in ayahuasca. Okay. Anyways, under the influence of this drink, this blueberry drink, this person that looked human and claimed to be a British diplomat shapeshifted to look non-human. Now, Brenda did not give me a very clear description of what he morphed into, or what he shapeshifted into. But anyway, she became pregnant because of this particular encounter. It was she said it was consensual, but there was a miscarriage, and the child never was born. Okay, there was a miscarriage, so it never, you know, it never became a baby. But she had all the signs of pregnancy, and I think, yeah, when this thing came out, it wasn't alive. But anyways, so there are women that are, you know, meeting people. One of the last things this British diplomat said before he was never seen again by Brenda was, there are many people like us in England. Now we go back to David Icke. David Icke is saying that in England, there's a bloodline he calls it an alien kind of Anunnaki or kind of bloodline. He's also open to the idea of the Watchers now, that there's this bloodline. And this bloodline is actually in prophecy in the Bible. In the book of Genesis, it talks about the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. Anybody heard about that prediction in the book of Genesis? That there was, see, the serpent that was in the Garden of Eden, he's supposed to be Satan or Lucifer in a serpent form, right? That's what Christians and people that study Genesis believe. It says that Lucifer or Satan has an ability to change his shape and appearance in the New Testament. It says he can appear as a being of light, but he can take on other forms. When I went to research a New Age community in Scotland, they had encounters with the god Pan, part goat, part human. And Pan said to one of the members of the Finhorn community, a fellow named Rock, I think he had more than one encounter, but one of the encounters was in Edinburgh. Pan said he was the devil. Now, why would Pan say he's the devil? Is because Christians perceived this Pan creature as some kind of devil, or? But he said he's the devil, and he said, if you love me and you love my subjects, then you've just said you love the devil. But then Pan says, well, that's how the Christians perceive us to be. So, you know, you kind of say, well, I'm saying I'm the devil, but hey, why did he say he was the devil in the first place, and that you love the devil, or that I'm the devil? And then later he said, well, that's how Christians perceive us to be. Why would he say that? I mean, that's okay. Have you heard of David Pilates' research, Missing 411? The book series, the videos. He's been researching mysterious disappearances in the United States, Australia, Canada, England. And recently he said, in areas where people have disappeared, people are hearing a flute sound. Now, if you know anything about Pan, right, he plays the flute. He plays the panpipes, or whatever, they're called panpipes, or some kind of flute-like instrument. But David Pilates is saying, in areas where people are disappearing, sometimes they see lights in the sky, UFO phenomena. There's Bigfoot creatures sometimes seen in these areas where people are disappearing. And there's this flute sound. If you type in the King of Tyre in a Bible search engine, there's this King of Tyre that's mentioned. Tyre was a kind of a country north of Israel in what we call Lebanon today. But this King of Tyre is described to be like Lucifer. And it says he has instruments, musical instruments and pipes. And the term pipes are associated with this description of the King of Tyre, who is like Lucifer. So when we deal with beings that we call ET, now Jacques Vallée, he used to hold to the ET hypothesis, but he came to a conclusion, and he wrote about it in this book called Passports to Magonia, and also another book called Messengers of Deception, another book called Dimensions, that he has now abandoned the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and along with some other UFO researchers like John Keel and sometimes Nick Bradford, they believe that we're dealing with a phenomenon. It's perceived to be ET, but in their research, that these beings have an ability to appear in many different forms. They can appear in a human form. They can appear to look like aliens. They can look like they take on an animal-human hybrid form. The gods of Egypt or Greece, you know, the gods back then, they had bodies that were human, Pan had a body that was part goat, part, torso was human, sort of a face, but he had horns, he had goat-like qualities. So we have cryptids like Bigfoot, Goat Man, Owl Man, Dog Man, and people have encountered these beings, and some people that have had encounters have had very unpleasant encounters. Pan's encounter, described in the book The Magic of Findhorn, was a fairly benign encounter. There was nothing really bad that happened to people. But when I was at the Findhorn community in Scotland, spending some research, I asked some of the Findhorn people, well, what happens when you follow the guidance of these spirits, these nature spirits and elves, and what happens when you follow the guidance? And I was told, well, it doesn't always go well. When we follow their guidance, and they guide us, and that sometimes doesn't turn out well for people. I mean, relationships fall apart. People that come to the community, they have spiritual encounters with spirits of nature and so on, but it doesn't all go well. I mean, it broke up Elaine Caddy and Peter Caddy's marriage. Somehow their marriage fell apart. Peter eventually went to Mount Shasta, and then he was killed in a car accident. But Elaine Caddy, I met her. She spoke at the planetarium. And she is a person who is a very lovely person. She says that we should practice unconditional love. Yes, we all agree that we should love each other, be more kind to each other. I mean, that's fine. But she claims that the spirits that guided her helped her and other people start the Findhorn community. Well, at the Findhorn community, they have a philosophy, a spirituality, a worldview that is very similar. And also there's a belief in the Space Brothers at Findhorn. Peter Caddy was especially interested in what he called the Space Brothers. Well, this philosophy that's passed on is a form of pantheistic monism. All is one, all is God. That's the same teaching, very similar teaching to Valiant Thor. And Valiant Thor teaches you to use guided imagery or imagination, to create a dimensional door. He calls it the magic door with guided imagery. And Brenda Mahl was using this method to initiate contact through guided imagery and meditation. So if you put out mental intent that you want contact, you've seen a UFO, or you've had a close encounter of a closer kind, some of these people, they become ongoing contactees, or in some cases, they become abductees. Okay, so the positive contact experiences have created UFO religions. Some people call them cults, but they're UFO religions. But again, these people are given prophecies by these aliens, times when they're going to show up. And often these prophecies fail. They don't show up. They don't keep their word. They give promises that we're going to do something on a certain day or time, and that doesn't happen. Now, the word prophet, of course, is in the Quran. It's in the Bible. There are even people that are called oracles. In ancient Greece, they were called oracles. And who are they oracles to? They were oracles to the god Zeus or Apollo, or the Delphic order was a. And in order to be a channel or a medium for these gods, you have to go into an altered state of consciousness. Now, the Delphic oracles, they would sit in the temple of Apollo, and these hallucinogenic vapors would rise from the ground, and they would be in this trance state, and they would be like speaking in another language or that had to be translated. But the oracles would give prophecies and give advice to people that came to Delphi. Okay, we have contactees that are channelers today for aliens, right? So the contactee phenomena involves some form of telepathy, mediumship, how many people have heard of Maria Orsic?
She's my favorite.
Okay, well, Maria Orsic was a very beautiful girl. She's, I think, a former ballet dancer. There's pictures of her, but she was involved with the Vril Society. It was a secret society in Germany. It's a society where these girls, they were channelers. They channeled beings that they thought were Aryan or Nordic alien type aliens from the Aldebaran system, star system. These women, like Maria Orsic, had very long hair that they felt was like an antenna, so they could easily make more contact through this, this this very long hair. But anyways, what were they trying to get? What kind of information were they getting? Well, they were trying to get new technologies, new science. Okay, there's even a UFO religion that I think started in the 1990s, and it's almost like this new UFO religion. It's mentioned on Wikipedia. They believe that there are they're called Mars Germans. There's a colony on Mars of Germans, and on the moon. I heard an interview with this fellow who claimed to be a whistleblower who was part of the secret space program. He was recruited in America to be part of the secret space program. Dolan talks about this program as some kind of breakaway civilization. Anyways, he gets to Mars, and Laura Eisenhower claimed that she was recruited to be part of a secret space program with a base on the moon, right? But anyways, according to some of the stuff that came through to the women in the Vril Society, it led to the downloading of information that led to some of this information being militarized to create weapons of war, but also to create, back then, what have been called Nazi UFOs, okay? And there are photographs and pictures of these UFOs that have swastikas on them. Rael claimed that the UFO that landed and the Elohim that came out of it, they had the swastika on their UFO. Now, later, because of the controversy of the symbol, the swastika symbol, they changed it to a swirl because they say, hey, why do you have a swastika? Why is that a symbol of the Raelian movement? But Robert Seffer has done a lot of research on what he thinks is Aryanism. He's an academic anthropologist. I've seen quite a few of his videos. And he did a video on the Watchers as well. He talked about the Book of Enoch. And he talked about this bloodline. This bloodline is dispersed largely in Europe, but also in English-speaking countries like Australia. It's a bloodline that has what is called Rh negative blood. How many people have heard of that?
Oh, Gordy, I just want to interrupt. When did you want to have like questions and discussion? We're going for about an hour and 10 minutes. I just want to, people want to ask questions.
We've already gone for an hour. I think I've said enough to give you a rough idea why I think the UFO phenomena. Hello?
Actually, Gordy, the part that you're about to talk about is really, really important to me because those are the people that abducted me, the ancestors of Enoch.
The Watchers.
So can you please talk about it? Can you talk about it a little bit more?
When you were abducted, what form did these Watchers take? How did they appear to you?
They appeared with the countenance of bright light, so bright that I couldn't see their faces, but they had long white hair. Very long, straight white hair.
They look fairly human?
Yeah. And I figured out during, all of my research that happened like 50 years ago. So I've had 50 years of research myself. And finally, I figured out what they, not what, but who they were. And they were definitely ancestors of Noah because they had faces that shone like the sun, like it says in the Bible, that Noah had a
Okay,
face.
did they say they were the Watchers, like they said to Betty Andreessen?
No, they told me that they were Martians.
Martians.
And they told me that they were my ancestors. So this is a particularly interesting subject to me, what you're about to talk about.
Have you had a blood test? Do you have Rh negative blood?
My mother.
Your mother has Rh negative blood.
Not me.
Okay.
Yeah, because my dad had positive, so you can't have negative. If you
That's right.
mix it with
That's
positive,
right.
you can only have positives. Yeah.
Well,
but my mom was Rh negative.
How many of you heard of the bloodline of Melusina?
Hey, Gordy, maybe you should turn on a light. You're getting a bit dark there. The sun
Oh, okay. I'll get the light closer
you're
to the
main
wall.
speaker for the video. Here.
Is that okay, or is
Can you
it,
just finish your
face?
Can you just finish your thought about what you were going to say about Noah? Brian interrupted you.
Okay,
just when
there's
you
a
were gonna say it.
prophecy in the New Testament. Jesus said before the end of the world, before the time of great judgment, the time of the book of the things in the book of Revelation are going to be fulfilled. He said it will be like the days of Noah. When Eli Marzulli, he did some research on the Watchers as well. He wrote 3 books on the Watchers, and he believes the Watchers were responsible for creating this hybrid race called the Nephilim. This hybrid race, sometimes in some Bibles, they're referred to as giants or beings of great stature, like Gilgamesh or Goliath or King Og in the Old Testament. Aboriginal Indians report red hair giants that they had to do battles with in North America. They have stories about these giants. Well, so giants, these giants or fallen ones, or they're called the Nephilim, they're also referred to as the men of renown in some translations of the Bible. That they were the heroes of the Greeks, Achilles, Perseus, Hercules. Yeah, but in other cultures, like, have you heard of the Incas or there were leaders and kings among these people that had elongated skulls. You've heard about the Paracas skulls in Peru.
Yeah.
But there were pharaohs of Egypt that had elongated skulls, like Tutankhamun.
Right.
And so there is evidence that somewhere in our history, in the past, there was this kind of genetic tampering with human DNA and human people to create a hybrid race. Now, David Jacobs is talking about this hybridization program. So is Timothy Good. But they perceive it as a threat. They, Mary Rodwell doesn't, and there's a Barrett Marberland doesn't. But they believe that this hybridization program is to create a new governance or new kind of government on this planet, where the hybrids, certain humans, are going to, be in charge of this coming world order or world governance.
How do you explain Noah, though? Because when Noah was born, his father was kind of suspicious of Noah's mom, because he was born with white hair and radiant face, and they didn't know where he came from. All the people were surprised.
Okay.
Noah, So, and Noah is definitely part of the Christian culture. So,
if there's no real physical description of Noah in the book of Genesis. I mean, they don't describe him in great detail on what he looked like, but he was not killed in the flood because I think his genetic line or himself or his family were not hybridized. They were not, let's say, genetically tampered with. Now, whether he had white hair or white complexions, Robert Seffer believes that Noah was Caucasian and his children were Caucasian. The 3 sons of Noah, that they had Caucasian or Caucasoid features, okay? Now, that's his interpretation. There's others that believe the sons of Noah gave race to all the different races of mankind, the Orientals, the Africans, the Semitic people, and everybody came from this family of Noah. But Jesus himself said it will be like the days of Noah before the return of the Son of Man. The word Son of Man is in the book of Enoch, and it's a prophecy about Messiah in the book of Enoch. It's also, when Jesus was on earth, he called himself the Son of Man. But according to Christian theology, Jesus is the Word of God. He is, let's say, he is God. He's the visible image of the invisible God. And so when Jesus describes God, or the theology of God is explained by rabbis or theologians, God is not one with the universe. He is not one with everything. He created everything, but he's distinct from creation. But the philosophy that's coming from these aliens today, or like Valiant Thor, is that everything, all is one, all is God. Everything is connected. Well, it talks about the Spirit of God, the third person of the Trinity, and the Spirit of God pervades all of creation. It holds, the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Christ holds all of matter and everything in the universe. It's like God is the God particle. The God particle is just not a particle. It is the Spirit of God holding everything together. Without God's intervention and holding the universe together, it would not be together. It would be destroyed. In fact, there is a promise in prophecy. About 25% of the Bible is prophecy. And it talks one day about a new heaven and a new earth. This old earth now will cease to exist. It will be destroyed by fire. Now, how can the earth be destroyed by fire? Well, we have a supernova of our sun. That would cause it.
Or when these solar mass ejections.
We have a solar mass ejection that may knock out the grid, or that's depicted in the movie Knowing with Nicolas Cage, where a giant solar flare destroys everything. But in prophecy, there's a promise of a new heaven and a new earth. Okay? And where there's no more suffering, no more tears, no more pain, no disease. That's going to be part of the new heaven and new earth. But we don't live in that time. We're not in the new earth yet. Now, people are looking for. I want to
comment on what you said about monism, like you're critical of the idea. Like, I'm a Buddhist teacher, also agree. We don't believe in non-duality, that all is one. Like, I don't want to be one with Lenin and Trotsky and Stalin. I don't want to be one with them. So I disagree. Like, you're opposed to the idea of monism, and Buddhism is as well. I think.
Yeah, I'm opposed to the concept of pantheistic monism, that all is one, all is God. Okay, it's not taught in the Bible. But there's this idea that the Spirit of God pervades and keeps all of creation together. Scientists are looking for what they call the God particle. It may not be a particle; it's a spirit. And the Bible says that God is spirit, but He's an infinite personal spirit that has a triune nature. Okay, but if the Spirit is pervading nature, it doesn't mean it's one with nature. Like, a good example is a sponge, any kind of sponge. You can have water in the sponge. The water can permeate the sponge, but the water is distinct from the sponge. The sponge and the water are not one and the same. Okay, so in Christian theology, the concept of God's Spirit holding the whole universe together. All living things are held together by God. And there's a passage in Colossians that in Christ, who is the visible image of the invisible God, that He holds all things together. In Him, all things exist. Okay, in Him we walk and live and have our being. So there's this idea that God is, deeply involved with His creation. In fact, in a way, He permeates all of creation. At the same time, He is distinct from it. But what we're hearing from aliens and what are called spirit guides, familiars, channeled entities, they don't teach that. What they teach is all is one, all is God. Everything, pantheistic monism, all is one.
We can't trust these aliens, you're saying?
Well, if they're saying things that are contrary to what God has already revealed about Himself, and there is a problem if God is everything, if God is the universe, then everything that we consider to be evil sometimes is also part of God.
Yeah.
you know, if God is both good and evil at the same time, or everything is God, then things that we consider to be cruel and bad and evil, that's supposed to be part of God too. Well, how can you trust or follow a God like that?
Should we ask for more questions? I mean, some people
Okay,
might want to talk here. Some people might want to say something or
maybe
comments.
a few some more comments or questions. Sure,
Yeah,
go
comments, questions, anyone else?
I have another question if nobody has a question. You mentioned a lady named Carla something that wrote a book.
Carla Turner. No, that's Betty Andreessen. She was involved with the what is called the Andreessen. She's described in the book the Betty Andreessen case, the Andreessen affair. Sorry. Yeah, here. Yeah, what about her?
Andreessen.
Betty Andreessen. Okay.
Yeah, nothing. I just want to learn about it. I would like to read the book.
Okay, well, anyways, I read that these beings said that they were the Watchers. Like you think that you had an encounter with the Watchers. Well, there's two types of Watchers. According to Raymond Fowler, the Watchers in the book of Daniel are, you know, good Watchers. But then the book of Enoch talks about these fallen Watchers, or fallen, you know, beings that are like fallen angels. So, but like I say, there are encounters with these beings that appear in a human form, and they can look more beautiful than your average person. In fact, Richard Dolan said he's heard about cases where they've met these aliens that look like Scandinavian supermodels. Have you heard of the Dolan's cases with people that claim they have encountered with these beings that they're called the Nordics, or they're also referred to as...
We had a UFO meetup Christmas party around 2010, and these two like Scandinavian looking couple came in the early 20s. No one knew who they were. They hung out in the kitchen with us. They're very good looking. They stayed for a while and they left. We wondered, you know, were those Nordics? We really wondered, were they really Nordics?
They were.
Never saw them before or since.
Why did they come to the UFO meetup? Were they claimed to be? Were they claiming to be in contact with beings that are ET, or?
No, they didn't make any claims about themselves. Like, they spoke English. They talked to us for a while, and then they left.
Well, they didn't do anything that was perceived to be supernatural,
no,
right?
No, they didn't.
Okay. Well, they were having some meetings at their place. I could have gone to their meetings, but then they got this word that they had to leave town. They said, well, we've been told we got to leave town, and so they disappeared. I don't know what happened to them.